Thanks for watching CNN 10. We are your down-the-middle explanation of world events, and I'm your anchor, Cral Azuz. Great to see you this April 26th. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments yesterday on what could be the most significant case of its current term. It concerns the restrictions that the Trump administration put in place last year on people coming to the U.S. from 7 countries. There have been 3 versions of what's been called the travel ban. They've been changed as conditions have changed and as legal challenges to the bans have played out. Most of the countries in the ban have Muslim-majority populations. And while he was on the campaign trail, then presidential candidate Donald Trump had called for a shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. So critics have argued the ban is discriminatory and unconstitutional. Most of the Muslim world is not restricted in the travel ban, and the Trump administration says the restrictions that are in place are necessary for national security. So supporters have argued that the president has the constitutional authority to keep certain non-citizens out of the country. The Supreme Court's decision on this is being closely watched across the country. It could be looked at by future presidents when they shape their immigration policies, as well as lower courts if a case involves what a candidate says on the campaign trail. Experts say a president does have power over immigration and national security. This case could more clearly define that. The High Court's decision is expected this June. 10-second trivia. What country has more time zones than any other nation? Russia, China, Brazil, or France? France is the smallest country here in terms of land area, but its overseas territories help it stretch across 12 time zones, the most in the world. Yesterday, France's leader addressed a joint session of the U.S. Congress, 58 years to the day after one of his predecessors, former French President Charles de Gaulle, did the same thing. Current French President Emmanuel Macron was wrapping up a 3-day state visit to the U.S. Capitol. He was the formal guest of President Trump. The two leaders have a close relationship, but that doesn't mean they always see eye to eye on world issues.
By polluting the oceans, not mitigating CO2 emissions, and destroying our biodiversity, we are killing our planet. Let us face it, there is no planet B. As for Iran, our objective is clear. Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons. Closing the door to the world will not stop the evolution of the world. It will not douse but inflame the fears of our citizens. We have to keep our eyes wide open to the new risks right in front of us.
Next, has a recent data scandal had a financial impact on Facebook? Its stock's been on a roller coaster ride since last month when news came out that a company named Cambridge Analytica might have inappropriately gotten the information of 87 million Facebook users without them knowing about it.
Facebook's January earnings pushed its stock price to record highs.
It really is an absolute bumper week for Facebook.
But it's been a flood of bad news ever since.
Facebook under mounting pressure to answer questions about how a data firm with ties to President Trump's 2016 campaign collected private information from more than 50 million Facebook users without their permission.
It was a revelation that rocked the social media giant.
Over the last 5 days, Facebook's stock fell over 3%.
And shook public trust. The backlash forced founder Mark Zuckerberg on an apology tour. First in the media.
This was a major breach of trust, and I'm really sorry that this happened.
And then in front of a Congress now seeking to regulate Facebook.
I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here.
But that wasn't the end of Facebook's troubles this quarter.
Facebook's CEO was forced to publicly defend his platform for the second time in as many weeks.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has been forced to disavow an internal memo that called for growth at any cost.
Facebook is having to deal with yet another controversy.
What I want is for Facebook to stop being complicit in scamming vulnerable people. Facebook needs to police itself, not asking me to police it.
The company was called out for collecting the call logs and text messages of its Android users, scanning the photos and links users sent over Messenger, and even accused of spreading hate speech on the platform that sparked violence in Sri Lanka.
Every time Facebook comes forward to try to put out one fire, another fire pops up.
Amid the firestorm, Facebook has hired more staff to police its platform. It's promised to make it easier for users to retain control over their data, and it said it will adhere globally to tough new European Union data protections coming into effect next month.
Facebook's at a turning point. The question is how many resources can they invest to solve these problems?
The company issued a report yesterday that indicated it is weathering this storm. Despite the backlash from the scandal, which included a delete Facebook campaign, the number of people using Facebook actually grew. It now has 2.2 billion monthly users. At the end of last year, it had 2.13 billion. As far as revenue goes, Facebook hauled in almost $12 billion for the first 3 months of this year. That's close to 50% more money than it got the first 3 months of last year. But some analysts say it's early yet, that the scandal could still impact the company's earnings in the months ahead. You probably know someone who fits the description of a positive athlete. It could be because he keeps fighting through struggles. Maybe she helps others when she's not in the game. You can nominate that person for our new series at cnn.com/positiveathlete. Today's report is on Trevor Mellahan, who set up a toy drive for the hospital where he was once a patient.
Trevor was a very active toddler. In 2003, Trevor was climbing up into his car seat in our van, and he was complaining of a pain in his back. The soonest that an MRI could be done was the next day here at Eggleston. The MRI showed that there was a mass along his spine between his 4th and 5th lumbar. Their first concern was that it was cancer.
I realized how lucky I was. Like, it was such a serious deal and I didn't know anything about it.
The mass that was found was pressing along the nerves that are responsible for your lower body. Trevor was on the brink of being a paraplegic.
They took part of my spine out and removed the mass. I've recovered since then.
So once Trevor was on the move again, basically there was no stopping him.
Good job, Trevor! That's it, Trev!
And ultimately ended up being a runner.
I decided that I wanted to give back to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I wasn't sure how I'd do it, so I contacted the volunteer coordinator, Catherine.
He emailed me after I talked to Lauren, letting me know that he was a past patient here and the impact that this hospital had on his life, and they wanted to give back for a senior project here.
We're hoping we could make kind of like an Easter arrangement for the kids.
We decided that a toy drive would be the best option.
Donations are a huge part of the hospital. They are used in many capacities. Our nurses and child life specialists here use them for incentives to help kids get out of their rooms and out of their beds around the hospital. They're used for birthdays or different celebrations.
It was slightly surprising because I wasn't sure how many toys I'd get. I didn't think it'd be the 300 plus that I ended up bringing in. I was really excited though because it exceeded my expectations, and I knew that these toys would go to children and cheer them up.
It's amazing how the community comes together. It really was this rally wanting to support Trevor and support the hospital. It's just that many more smiles that are being delivered to these sick kids.
It makes me feel great because I knew I was one of those kids at some point. I knew that I would love to see all these toys arrive at my room. I know that 16 boxes of toys aren't going to one kid's room, but still, they gotta be so happy.
If you visit a Smithsonian museum this summer, the person who greets you may not be a person at all. This is Pepper, and it attempts to answer visitors' frequently asked questions like, "Where's the bathroom, Pepper?" At least it does when it's not dancing, telling stories, or posing for pictures. A robotics company donated 25 Peppers to the Smithsonian. Each one is valued at $25,000. Museum officials say Peppers won't replace human volunteers, but we don't know how it'll handle stress. If it's peppered with a battery of questions, for instance, will that short circuit the robot? Oh sure, people get a charge out of it now, but will the novelty power down because its answers are all robotic? Whether artificial intelligence eventually replaces actual intelligence, it's tough to replace the human touch with plastic. I'm Carl Azuz for CNN.